a lot of people ask me, how did I know that I could do this? And as I mentioned, when William Carr and Patrick Leloy in particular were training for the first swim, they had all kinds of crazy training regimens, and they were supposed to exponentially increase the amount of time so that they could replicate being in the water for so long. And so before a 12-hour swim, William recommended that you need to be doing 6 to 8 hours so that your body knows what to expect, And for a 24-hour swim, you need to be doing at least 12 to 15 hours. And if you do it in a pool, then you can do it in the sea, because the sea is denser. The seawater is a lot denser than the fresh water, so you're much more buoyant. So it's a lot easier to swim in the sea. And they would do all these crazy training regimens, and I never had the time to do any of these, because I work. I have like almost 5 jobs, right. Between the scuba diving and the lionfish eradication project and my sustainable seafood business and cleaning boats. Like I take my scuba and I go and I scrape barnacles off of the underneath of boats. I could never put in that much time. So I just show up at 5 a.m. in the morning for Aqua Warriors swim training. And you have a near death experience for like an hour and 45 minutes with your coaches shouting at you. Coach Mosey Denoon and Rochelle Pear, they rock, right? Gotta give a shout out to them. And that's all the training I do, because if I did much more than that, I wouldn't even be allowed to come back home, right?
Yeah.
And so Richard Conybeare and myself set out one day to see if we could swim from Arnos Vale to Store Bay. He took 2 bottles of water, which he tied on to his swim buoy with a string. I took 2 bottles of water, which I put in the pocket of my swim buoy. Now you gotta check this, right? My original swim buoy was a hand-me-down from William Carr. And then the next hand-me-down from William Carr was an upgraded swim buoy with a pocket, which I put my water in.
Right.
So I gave my original swim buoy, which was handed down from William, and I handed it down to Richie, right? So my swim buoy had pocket. I put my waters in the pocket. His had no pocket. He tied his water on with string. And we left, and it was really lovely, and then the weather changed because we hadn't planned it properly. We hadn't checked the windy app. We hadn't checked even the meteorological office, nothing. We just thought, oh, it's a nice day for a swim. So it started to get really choppy. And when we stopped to have our first water break, he realized that his 2 bottles of water had become untied and were gone. So I had to give him one of mine. So the next part of the swim, I just had my 1 bottle. He had his 1 bottle. We got to Buku Reef, and the plan was to swim across Buku Reef. But when we got to Buku Reef, the tide was too low and the sea was too rough for us to safely swim over the reef. And that's because it had gotten choppy, so we'd gone slower than we anticipated. And we had to swim around the outside of Buku Reef.
Which is further.
Which is much further, and added on another 3.5 hours to the swim. And then the current was really strong and pushed us out of Pigeon Point. So when we were trying to come into Store Bay, it looked as though we were really far out to sea. And then the current was spitting out of Store Bay. So it was like a treadmill, and we couldn't make any progress to get into Store Bay. So we had to go over to the edge of the bay and swim along the coastline. And finally, we crawled up on the beach. I hadn't had a drink for 2 hours, and the last drink was hot like tea, because it was 1 bottle of water. And we crawled up on that beach, and it was an 11-hour swim on 1 bottle of water. Now, we could have gotten out if we'd wanted to.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a life or death, but we were so determined to make it that we almost made it like a life or death. So then, after swimming for 11 hours on 1 bottle of water, You're telling me I can't swim 24 hours if I have a floating bar with chilled coconut water, CK figs, excited faces on board, cameras.
Yeah. Like whole support system,
Whole support system.
following you, letting you know what's going on, how far you are, what's your pace.
Yes. So that was the acid test. And without being able to swim for as long as I needed to swim for and do as much training as would have been appropriate and recommended, it was again the mental part of having the confidence to know that, okay, I could do that on so little. So if I have all of this with me, surely I could double my time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it speaks to the probably in things like this, swims, runs, whatever the case is. Everybody always speaks to the mental component and how
Big time.
and how important it is, and sometimes more important than the physical.
Absolutely.
Because telling yourself I can keep going.
Yeah.
I think it was the Navy SEAL. I think it's a 80-20 rule that I'm gonna butcher it, but people can look it up. Is the Navy SEALs talk about it, how when you think you're done, when you think that you've given all, there's 20% more
Yes.
there.
That's right.
And you can, so it's
Turn
about,
it on
and it's about
with the mind.
like almost training yourself to not look at that 20% as something that's unreachable, unattainable.
You know what it is? When you're doing burpees or push-ups or pull-ups
You want to vomit.
or anything like that where your coach tells you you have to do 20 or 10 reps. And as soon as you get to that last rep, your coach then says, okay, you got to do 2 more. And then when you get to 2 more, they say, you got to do 1 more. When you thought you couldn't go anymore.
You thought the 20 was it.
That's it. And then you have to fight that urge to just die. And then you realize you got more.
There's always more energy there. It just doesn't necessarily feel like it.
Kind of tap into it.
So I guess those, like you call it, the acid test. I mean, those. I mean, we could probably apply that to our lives.
Absolutely.
And that we can always keep going.
I did the Republic Day celebrations in Roxborough, Aquaman swimming race. Right, that's a big race for me. There's a money prize, right, and stiff competition with the Aqua Warriors. But what we do is we try to outsmart each other. Like I would call up Dante Williams, who's the fastest swimmer in Tobago. He should be representing us in the Olympics. And I say, Dante, listen, how much for you to stand down? Like, if it's $8,000, I'll give you like a nice grand, man, just to stay home, But we joke about this all the time. But anyway, I got there last year, and Dante Williams wasn't there. Jacob Cox wasn't there. None of the big ones were there who can beat me easily. It's a 1 mile swim, so it's more of a sprint. And I was the only, I knew I was going to win. And then one of the younger swimmers came, and they weren't going to have the race because there weren't enough swimmers. So I said, you got to come. And his name is Shawneem. And I said, Shawneem, you got to do this. And he said, no, I came for the sprint from the jetty to the beach, and I can't go out there. And I said to his mother and his grandmother, I said, he can do it, and he'll be fine. So I encouraged him to go. We're going out on a pirogue to the island, a mile off of the jetty in Roxborough, Tobago. And all of a sudden, this little kid, Shawneem, he's like 13, 14 years old. He turns to me and he says, they have shark out here? And so I say, yeah, they have shark out here. Just swim fast and follow me. When he finished that race, he came second. And he beat 2 guys who are good swimmers, who are big guys. And the confidence that gave him, you couldn't believe how it translated into his swimming at the club.
Oh, without a doubt.
I
can see that. I have nephews now that are almost that age, and they all play sports.
Yeah.
And you could see when, even if they play somebody who's better than them, and they don't, then they lose.
Yeah.
Like one of them plays tennis. Even if he gets 1 or 2 games, it's he's like, all right. It's like, all right, okay, yeah. I'm getting better. And it's about seeing the positive, about seeing the silver lining, as opposed to, because this world is trying to knock us down every second of the day.
Absolutely.
And especially if you're competitive athlete or whatever,
Yep.
it's probably tenfold the amount of negativity and self-doubt that exists. So I guess those mental boosts, or those times when you prove to yourself that you can do something,
Yeah.
it's mind opening.
Absolutely.
You
It's
know.
like the high water mark, Everything changes from that point on.
Right.
And I want to conclude with an interesting story. It's an experiment, actually. And it was done in the 60s by a Polish scientist with rats. And the scientist took an aquarium half filled with water and threw a rat in, and stop clock started. And he timed how long it took for the rat to get to the stage where it looked like it was going to drown. And he did this with thousands of test cases, so he got an average time. And the rats on average would start to drown about 2.5 hours after they've been put into the water. Of course, they're looking for a way out. So they're panicking, they're clawing at the glass. So they're not swimming horizontally like a rat would swim if it knows where it's going.
Right.
They were trying to get out, so they're burning a lot of energy vertically, right? Some swimming technique there for you.
Right. Good to know.
Right. But then, so 2.5 hours, basically. And then he changed the experiment. And same aquarium, same half filled with water, throw the rat in, start the stop clock. When the rat looks like it's about to drown, you stop the stop clock and you put a piece of wood into the aquarium, like a 2x4, and allow the rat to find its way out, climb up the wood, rest on the edge of the aquarium for 10 minutes, and then throw the rat back in, take the wood out, start the stop clock, and see how long the rat swims for now. You have a guess? 2.5 hours
Was the original.
was the original. Now, how long do the rats swim after they have found a way out and then had to go again?
It swam longer because it knew that it was a possibility.
Swam longer because they knew in their little rat mind that there was a way out. They just had to find it. So they swam horizontal, they took their time, they went around and around and around, thinking at some point we're going to find the way out. So it's like they believed it. They had hope. They had like faith in themselves that they could get out of here again.
Because they had experienced
Because they had
a part of that
of it.
success
Yes,
before.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, would you like to guess how long the rat swam for after they'd been put back in the water? After they had found their way out on the 2x4.
I mean, it was 2.5 hours. I want to make a
2.5
guess, but I have a feeling that I'm going to be surprised. But for 3.5 hours, an hour extra, 4.5 hours.
2.5 days, my friend.
Oh wow!
2.5 days.
The power of the mind.
Power of the mind. And as you would say, talk done.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Thank you very much again.
Absolutely.
All right, good.
Thanks a lot.